board decision yesterday.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Lanchowski, president of the Institute. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce a great American, a distinguished speaker for us today, who will be talking about the issues surrounding his new book, Character. Dr. Jack London has had an extraordinary career in service of this country for a very long time. He is a graduate of the Naval Academy, of the Naval Postgraduate School. He has a doctorate in business administration from George Washington University. He served in the Navy as an aviator, amongst other things, for many years, rising to the rank of captain. He went into the private sector as one of the first earliest employees of CACI, and is considered really the founder of the modern CACI, which is an enormous defense and professional IT and professional services company, serving many U.S. government agencies and ultimately serving the national security of our country. He is dedicated to the national security of this country and has demonstrated this fact in so many different ways. He's been recognized, he has so many honors, there are too many to list. He's been inducted into the Washington Business Hall of Fame, the Naval Postgraduate School's Hall of Fame. He has gotten awards from the Association of the U.S. Army, the Navy League, the Marine Corps Scholarship Association, or something like that. I mean, there are just all sorts of these things. He served as the CEO of CACI for many years, and most recently has been as the executive chairman and chairman of the board. He is a national security intellectual who writes about the various different issues in our field on cutting-edge issues, including particularly the issues concerning asymmetric warfare. He has started a lecture series sponsored by CACI on matters of asymmetric warfare. And ultimately, he has been concerned not only for the sake of his business, but ultimately for the welfare of our country, with something that we here at IWP have been concerned with, and that is the question of character, the questions of moral leadership. And it is Jack's thesis that if you don't get this right, if you don't have people in your organization who are people of character, if we don't have leaders in our country and citizens who have good character, then it is simply all vanity. It's not going to work. It's not going to succeed. And we here at IWP agree ever so strongly with this proposition. We here are dedicated to trying to help our students cultivate their character. We believe that the standard of moral leadership in our government and in our private sector organizations and nonprofits all needs to be elevated in this country. And either some people are going to be conscious about this and are going to take an affirmative stand, both in terms of how they conduct their own lives, so that to raise that standard at the micro level, but ultimately when you get enough people in serious positions of leadership to do this kind of thing, you can begin to change the culture and change these matters on a macro level. And Jack is walking the walk. He's not just doing this. He is as a pontificator. He is taking a leadership role in his corporation, and by writing this book and speaking about it, he is raising people's consciousness about a matter that is of national strategic importance. And so it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you an American patriot, a great corporate leader and by the way, let me just say one other thing. In talking with Jack about these matters, Jack and I had an uncanny shared an uncanny perspective about how there are two kinds of people in this world. This is a little lesson that we teach to our students, and if you were at our commencement, you hear me give a little homily about this as well. There are mission-oriented people, and then there are people for whom it's all about them, who just want to get power, glory, money, credit, bureaucratic empire, all of these other things. And the problem is that every organization, no matter what it is, wants people who are mission-oriented, who will accomplish the mission and serve a cause higher than themselves, and in the process, they will end up serving themselves. It's a question of where's the priority. And Jack is a teacher of this lesson, and it's just a great pleasure to have you come and reinforce everything that we try to do here on this score, and to share your wisdom with a good chunk of our community here. Jack, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, John. I can tell you I appreciate those words of introduction, and couldn't possibly ask for a better stage setting for what I intend to talk about for a little while here. I have, as John has indicated to you, can you hear me okay? Yeah, make sure I'm working all right here. On this topic for quite a while, and have a serious interest in promoting the notion of integrity and character in our society and our culture. Because, for one thing, I think it's one of our problems right now. So, let me just say thank you for inviting me. It's a distinct honor and pleasure to be here. And thank you too, David. It's my classmate, David Rogers, here on the front row. And, we share a lot of experiences. And what we're not going to talk about. So, being here at the Institute of World Politics is an honor and a pleasure. I've been here a few times and heard other people talk about international challenges and security issues, and even in some cases cyber warfare, technology issues, things that are my particular interest. But I'm bringing, I guess, a topic here that's a little bit different from some of the things that more commonly are debated and discussed in this forum. But as you said, as John in his opening remarks, introductory remarks, you really don't get anywhere if you don't have an organization that has its own sense of character. And I'm convinced that that's the case. So as you might imagine, the topic of character is getting a lot of press these days. It seems like every time you pick up the newspaper or turn on the TV or whatever, you're seeing new issues and challenging issues that really have to do in many cases with integrity and character. So a little bit on the background of my book just to get started. I have some very fine people that have endorsed or sponsored what I've done. Norman Augustine is the former CEO and chairman of Lockheed Martin. You may know of his fine career serving both in the government, in the defense and security arena, as well as in American industry and enterprise. And he kindly wrote the foreword for my book, in which he noted that character is something we should all think about, no matter where we are in life. No matter where we are in life. So this isn't just a book you give to your college student friends or children or grandchildren. This topic is germane for every single one of us. And I also want to thank Roger Staubach, one of my Naval Academy friends. That's the Dallas guy. Cowboys and Indians. No, he's the cowboy guy, and a good friend of mine, and believes in the notion of integrity and character, and was delighted to assist in doing an endorsement for me. And the other two fellows, you may or may not know their names. Commander Everett Alvarez was a very close friend of mine. Was the first naval aviator that was shot down and captured and spent 8.5 years in Hanoi, the Hanoi Hilton. and another good friend of mine, Air Force chap, Colonel Lee Ellis, who is in the business of leadership development and management consulting and training. And I would just submit to you that all these people are very qualified to have addressed the topic of character. So I was very pleased that they would join me. And as John indicated, well, I'm not going to do a book review. In fact, authors shouldn't do book reviews anyway of their own work. I do want to provide a status report, a character status report. And regrettably, there's plenty to talk about. So where do I start? Where do we start? Well, let's pick up one just that's kind of floating around in the media right now. Let's start with General Motors. For several months now, you've been reading about how General Motors spent a decade hiding design problems, or at least allegedly hiding design problems in several of the models. It contributed to at least 13 deaths, reportedly. So the question comes up, how could their leadership not have known about it? And then on top of it all, the United States government decided that there was some validity to those assertions and fined General Motors a whopping $35 million. A whopping $35 million for their deadly mistakes. And it's said that that's only one day's revenue for General Motors. And I think maybe that's a little short too. So I would look at this as an embarrassment on our system, not only of character and culture, but also in our adjudication of these issues. And I'd also say that there are way too many examples along the past 10 years or so. I mentioned General Motors, certainly the Enron situation with Ken Lay, Lehman Brothers situation. There's Bernie Madoff, his incredible Ponzi scheme, bilking hundreds of millions, if not billions, from his clientele. And there's just a few that come to mind. That's in the commercial side. But we don't have anything a lot better when it comes to the public side of affairs, does it? Certainly the IRS scandals are right in our face every day. Where the truth lies, I presume we'll find it out, but it's certainly up there as an issue. The Benghazi, there's bribery in Army procurement, and naval officers taking bribes in Southeast Asia. I've been in the press in the last 6 months. Even a recent issue of Shipmate. Some of you may know what Shipmate is. Many of you probably don't. It's the Naval Academy's alumni magazine. And regrettably, it has a lead article that has to do with the crisis in our culture, in our crisis of character. So we have just nothing but continuing issues of problems, and they're being talked about even in the Naval Academy alumni magazine. The other one we talked about a little bit earlier when we were visiting, John and I were visiting about the VA scandal and how that keeps growing. It's now estimated that and reported that some over 1,000 veterans may have died in the last decade because of malpractice or lack of care from the VA medical centers. It's almost one of those things, can you actually believe it? But then, on the other hand, also regrettably, this town seems to be have an infamous perspective of people that continue to think that they can deny existing problems, or if they can't deny them, at least they can cover them up. How often have we seen that little ritual played out? Agonizingly too many times, of course. But on the other hand, I must tell you, I'm not really surprised at all this. According to the 2013 National Business Ethics Survey, observed misconduct in the workplace was at 41%. So where do we look for help? Where do we look for help? Apparently not from our political leaders. According to recent polls, 65% of Americans are dissatisfied with how the government works. Congress's approval rating if I've got the latest, is a mere 13%. And our president fares a little better at 41%. And less than 20% of Americans believe business leaders and government officials will tell the truth when confronted with a difficult issue. You can look at that the other way around. That's an 80% distrust factor. I would think you would share with me the agony of those numbers and what they seem to be telling us. This lack of confidence is also affecting our global leadership. According to the Reputation Institute, the United States ranked 22nd among the world's most reputable countries. Canada, Sweden, Switzerland, and Austria were at the top. I'm not going to get into a discussion about who does what, but the fact that we don't appear in the upper echelon is a serious issue by itself. And as for competitiveness, I gave a talk recently about American competitiveness. Our ranking is a little better here, but not great. On the World Economic Forum's, out of Switzerland, their competitive index for 2013-2014, the United States ranked 5th. But less encouraging in that same survey body is that out of the 148 countries, the United States ranked 50th for public trust in politicians, 48th for transparency of government policy making, and 32nd for ethical behavior of its commercial firms. That's certainly far from the number one, best in breed, best in practice type of perspective that I've learned to think about my country over many years. So, it's not fun, it's not good news, but it is clear to me that we're off track. There are simply too many people choosing not to do the right thing. Even worse, it seems like too many people can't be trusted to do the right thing. And I'm going to talk about trust in a minute. So in the 3.5 years that some nights and weekends that took me to write and publish this book, it became clear that many of the problems we have in our country today are really due to a weakness of character. For both the individual, some of which we've listed here, a few of which we've listed, as well as for organizations, a few of which we've also listed here. In 1929, H.L. Mencken said profoundly, "There is something even more valuable to civilization than wisdom, and that is character." And I believe that gentleman got it right. In fact, it's one of the primary quotations I have in my book. And by the way, just a little anecdote, I had a wonderful time researching quotations on these topics. With today's internet and Google, you can have a lot of fun doing these kinds of things, and I did enjoy it immensely. There's many good gems out there, and I've plowed a lot of them into my book, as you will note. Character really turns out to be something that matters with all people, at all times, and everywhere. In my book, I define character as a unique set of moral and ethical qualities that define what you believe in, what you stand for, and what you expect of yourself and of others. It's also, of course, related to the notions of integrity, value, and doing the right thing. But it basically is a matter of what you believe at your core. And it's also true, while a variety of factors form our capabilities and influence the events in our lives, I believe that how you act on these qualities, your statement of character, will determine how far you will go. How do I relate this? It's a personal belief, and eventually it became the basis, of course, for my book, Character, the Ultimate Success Factor. And considering that national security and national character is built on the character and values of our people, as John indicated in his opening remarks, it's a statement we clearly all need to work on. And I know that IWP has this as a major tenet as well. national character, and integrity. And you've already been working on this statement, and I commend you for it and applaud you for it. As it says on the IWP website, a key element of your education program is character development. And I quote specifically, the cultivation of those personal and civic virtues that are optimally suited to producing the moral and ethical conduct of our nation's highest public policy priority, national security. So, let's look at what we can do. There might be a couple of takeaways here. The first thing we need to do is address trust. These days, in my opinion, too many people, trust feels like a risk. At least with institutions and companies that have a responsibility for our well-being. However, it's true, organizational trust is embodied in culture. And of course, I'm not talking about dress codes or local customers. I'm talking about something much more important. For me, an organization's culture is what people believe is the right way to conduct their affairs and to treat each other. And successful organizations make culture an ongoing priority and an all-out effort. For example, culture is established with foundation documents that set an organization's mission, values, and guiding principles. They are reinforced by organizational codes of conduct and ethics, which obviously must be reviewed frequently. And repetition. Repetition is the key to ingraining the culture throughout the organization. But the fact always remains, the people in the organization must believe in the culture's values. There has to be what I would call a moral commitment. For example, all CACI employees receive a set of our foundation documents at their onboarding orientation. These documents include our CACI's credo, our mission statement, and our standards of ethics and business conduct. It sounds like the Lord is after me. The most important item, however, is our CACI culture statement, which presents our guiding principles. Another good example of ingrained culture is the United States Marine Corps. Their motto of mission, values, pride, and semper fidelis communicate the Marines' culture of mutual trust, collective pride, and self-discipline. A culture of trust also depends on having the right people. For me, finding the right people for CACI has always depended on 4 criteria: attitude, integrity, commitment, and expertise. Why is attitude first? Attitude is first. We want to work with people who have a consistently good and positive attitude with their colleagues, supervisors, and customers. Then comes integrity. We need people who will follow the rules, deliver high-quality performance, and have the good judgment to do the right thing. And third is commitment. Employees who are not fully committed to the position and the company's goals will hold everyone back. And you see that, perhaps, way too often. Expertise comes last in my set of criteria, because no amount of expertise will work if the employee has a poor attitude, if they're unreliable, or not fully committed to the project or the organization. It makes sense, doesn't it? You have to have these personality attributes really to bring to full force expertise and capabilities. And also I'd note that these qualities really transcend geographic, economic, and even political differences. It's also how I differentiate between mission-oriented people and what I call politically oriented people, which John talked about. That's a small p. The former group prioritizes the mission. Let's get it done. Let's do the right thing. let's accomplish our goals. The latter group prioritizes themselves. How do I fit in this? Where's my leverage? What are my opportunities? Now, I will readily admit the world doesn't so cleanly bifurcate. But if you talk about the emphasis in this way, you get the idea of what you want to achieve in terms of bringing a team together that has a mission focus. And I might add anecdotally, I guess you would easily understand which set of people I'm most interested in building a team at CACI. It has to do also with trustworthiness. Organizational culture must be empowering. Empathy and empowerment have been my double E secret. It's not electrical engineering, it's empowerment and empathy. For leadership success, what do I mean? Well, in a couple of sentences. Empowering people is an absolutely necessary condition for building a company or an organization of any size or consequence. You just simply can't do it unless you empower people to make the right kinds of decisions as they go forward. Empathy, on the other hand, is knowing your people and what motivates them, what gets them inspired. So we really need to help our people rise to the challenges they face every day, and I submit the empathy and empowerment perspective gives you, as a leader, tremendous leverage in building your organization. This is also why a culture that emphasizes good character is literally the sine qua non for high-level organizational performance and resilience. And I submit you will never see a truly successful, highly performing organization that doesn't report to these characteristics and attributes. And the glue that holds it all together is trust. So why such an investment in trust? Well, according to the recent 2014 Ethics and Compliance Effectiveness Report, the best performing organizations prioritize ethical leadership, use the organization's values as a framework for decision making, and embrace culture as a competitive advantage. And believe me, that's what I'm trying to do with my organization. Prioritize ethical leadership, use the organization's values as a framework for decision making, empowering and decentralizing decision making, and embracing a culture as a competitive advantage. Likewise, the Corporate Executive Board, another research group, found that high integrity companies enjoy productivity gains, improved internal communications, and better strategic alignment. Furthermore, these companies also had better shareholder returns. For people with fiduciary duty shareholders like me, that their returns were better over both 5 and 10-year time periods. So somewhere along the line you begin to realize that trustworthiness pays off. Achievements, mission orientation, and shareholder performance. Everyone. The next part of our character statement is accountability. That's a big deal and a big word for me. It all comes down to one simple fact. It's that you alone, are responsible for who you are. And that's really a takeaway in this book as well. For your character and your success in your life, or your failure. You're accountable. I learned a piece of this lesson early on, and it's reflected in one of my father's favorite poems. And he was one of those youngsters that was raised at the turn of the last century. And a lot of their notion of English literature and literature was to memorize poems. And he had about half a dozen that he could recite, just kind of one over and over all the time. And you kind of get read into how he went through his high school days. But the poem was Invictus. And I hope you have had an opportunity to reflect on William Henley's poem Invictus. He wrote it in 1875. He wrote about facing life's challenges with fortitude and conviction. The lines have always stayed with me, and I reflect on them actually from time to time. They read, "It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." That's taking accountability, the way I see it. I had that hammered into me quite frequently when I misbehaved a little. Unfortunately, too many people don't seem to agree with or want to accept this responsibility at that level. And according to yet another study, to a leading culture consulting firm, the study of personal accountability in organizations, findings were that 60% of the respondents admitted that they had seen a problem developing but did nothing about it. 60%. 63% said they waited to see if a situation would resolve itself. It's kind of a hide and watch strategy. Still worse, appallingly worse, 85% felt powerless, that they had no control of the situation. A commitment to accountability is not easy, especially if things go wrong. Some, though, are willing to take responsibility. General and President Dwight D. Eisenhower set an inspiring example of accountability as he prepared for the D-Day invasion in 1944, June 6th. By the way, I had an uncle that made that invasion. My wife has an uncle that made that invasion. My uncle did not come home. Hers did. Despite massive preparations, the Allies faced considerable tactical challenges. On June the 5th, the day before, Eisenhower made two bold decisions. The first was to proceed with the attack and the landing. Second was to write a private note and address it to Army Chief of Staff General George Marshall, taking full responsibility and accountability for the decision for the attack. Eisenhower wrote that his decision was based on the best information available, but he said, "If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone." Of course, as we all know, the note would never be sent, but the message has been heard ever since. It was an example I tried to follow. In April 2004, an illegally leaked United States Army top secret report wrongfully accused CACI International and one of our employees of maltreatment of detainees at Abu Ghraib prison, where we had a contract with the United States Army to support the interrogation process and the data collection and information transfer. The pictures depicting the abuses, as you well know, are tarnished everyone's associated with Abu Ghraib, including CACI. Wrongfully charged, however. What I learned was that the ensuing media feeding frenzy, put everyone, including CACI, at great risk. So what do we do? In response, we developed a hyper-crisis management strategy that addressed the various challenges of the crisis and those affected by it. And this was the mother of all tsunamis in terms of a worldwide issue. This wasn't something that was going to go away in 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks. And as you well know, the tragedies of Abu Ghraib are still manifest themselves from time to time throughout our society. Our inspiration was Johnson & Johnson's handling of the 1982 Tylenol poisonings crisis that killed 7 people up and around the Chicago area. I would hope that many of you would remember that, or recall that set of situations. Their leader at that time, their CEO, was James Burke. And Johnson & Johnson Their response model was to put their customers' well-being first and primary. The nationwide Tylenol recall cost Johnson & Johnson more than $100 million, and that was in 1982. But their development of tamper-resistant packaging, a switch to caplets, and an intensive public relations and marketing campaign helped restore confidence in the Tylenol name and brand. And I think you know the rest of the story. And it's still reflected on as a case study in how to handle those kinds of adverse situations. Likewise, we at CACI quickly acknowledged the abuse allegations that we were faced with, but we were not going to comment on anything that wasn't fact. We also made it clear that if evidence from the investigation showed that someone had broken the law in some fashion, we would not condone or tolerate any illegal or inappropriate behavior by any of our employees. The upshot was that CACI fully cooperated in full measure with the United States government, counting with 9 separate probing government investigations, 9 separate ones, which all found no validity to the accusations against CACI. But once you're tarnished, that website and the internet puts that around the world, and it's trying to pull that back is almost impossible. Remember, accountability is not to blame. It is not about blame. It's ownership over our decisions, our actions in particular, and consequences. So it's a little bit different notion than simply being responsible. It is taking accountability for what the consequences ensue, good or bad, at home or around the world. The late General Norman Schwarzkopf, Stormin Norman, got it right when he said, and he really got it right for me, leadership is a potent combination of strategy and character. But if you must be without one, be without the strategy. That's because without trust in the leader, there is no strategy or plan that will ever work. And I've actually seen that in motion as well. And for perhaps IWP to note, studies repeatedly find that trust in the person leading an organization is inextricably linked with trust in the organization itself. Highly correlated. You certainly know this at CACI. Still, there's some work to do. The Edelman Trust Barometer, another study, finds that 62% of people worldwide think that the everyday person is a credible source of information. But only 43% think the same of CEOs, and even less at 36% for government officials and leadership. Roughly 1 out of 3. I think that's the trend in the wrong direction. A neglected yet essential function of leadership is the demonstration and communication of character. It's talking about character. Leaders are responsible for maximizing their team's abilities, motivating them to be resourceful and innovative, of course, and recognizing their achievements. In a basic way, leaders must not fear making difficult decisions, nor should they make excuses. The primary reason, though, there is a primary reason, and is that because people, employees, watch their leaders and emulate their behavior. As a role model, the leader's example will also communicate to others how he or she will treat them and how he or she expects to be treated. By the way, I think this is a good point for me to make a little anecdote. There are a number of psychological behavior considerations that I will go through this book. And on the front cover, you will note two associates that helped me prepare this book. One is my research assistant, Celine Herr, and the other is my wife, Dr. Jennifer Burkhart London, who is a clinical psychologist. So the stuff I put in this book, she vetted for me. So I feel very comfortable in saying some of these things. I got tested. My early role models were a certain group of Navy leaders in the late 1960s. They were all World War II combat heroes, but also consummate professionals and dignified people, dignified gentlemen, who treated everyone with genuine respect. And I will never forget them. Rear Admiral Gene Fluckey, Medal of Honor recipient, submarine commander, Battle of the Pacific, affectionately known also as the Galloping Ghost of the China Coast, and received his Medal of Honor on his 11th patrol, which was a devastating patrol, single patrol up and down the coast of China, sinking Japanese tonnage. Another one was my boss, Admiral J.D. Jack Arnold, who was the Air Group 2 commander, Battle of the Philippine Sea, and Navy Cross, Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross, wonderful man and an inspiration to me. And then there was Pete Gallatin, another 4-star admiral that was involved with the early creation of the Polaris Poseidon program, and later supported the creation of the Trident submarine program. And why do I mention these people? They were dignified people. I certainly respected them. But they left an impression on my life that it has quite been pervasive over the years. I have developed, as I've grown along, a notion of never letting them down. I'm never going to do anything that lets them down. Later on, affiliates of mine included Thomas Moore, Admiral Tom Moore, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs during the Vietnam War, and of course General Hank Shelton, much later, a Vietnam combat veteran of the United States Army as well. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Why do I mention them? Well, they were role models, but they also served on my board of directors for a number of years during their promising days. Of course, Tom is buried now over in Arlington. Likewise, I realize that a big part of my leadership responsibility is being a role model within CACI and in the industry. For example, just as an anecdote, I present a monthly culture spotlight that I write within CACI, an article within CACI, which features an aspect of what we're doing, what's the recent and current situation within the company and or the public arena pertaining to our culture and our ethics and our integrity and our perspectives. But it's also important to note that the real authority to lead comes from trust. You can talk about commissions and you can talk about presidential orders and so forth, and that puts you in position. But the real authority to lead comes from the trust of the people to the leader. If a leader can't be trusted to do the right thing, no one else is going to. That was the message heard by too many people in the examples I gave earlier. And here at IWP, as practitioners of statecraft, your message will be heard around the world. Your graduates proceed forward. Your character statement, the character statement we convey, is what will reinforce or impair America's leadership in the world. And all of these things have to start somewhere. That journey has to start with that first step. On the other hand, this is another perspective or so. I want to say that, I want to be clear that I don't look at having good character as meaning there's such thing as a person being perfect or self-righteous, heaven forbid. So our character is always a work in progress. This is true for the individual, the organization, and now we could add easily for our dialogue here, the country as well. And there's always room for improvement. Something new to learn for all of us, no matter where we are in our lives or our careers. In fact, I kind of delight in seeing what I can pick up now that I'm deeply involved with this. Every day there's something new that I discover out there, that an anecdote or an experience or an example, or sometimes quote. It can be a lifetime pursuit, and I think it should be in some ways part of your leadership as you proceed forward with your important international political assignments and duties. It's also why I define success somewhat uniquely. I've had to be careful about my definitions here. I looked at it as acting with honesty and integrity, performing to the best of your ability, giving it your best shot, and importantly, appreciating all the people, good people along the way who help you achieve your goals. That's not magnanimous, that's appropriate. I think I looked around for some definitions, and I think this is, if not unique, it's a rare, a little bit unusual twist on the notion of success. And I did this on purpose because I don't see success, and John mentioned this earlier, as success is not solely measured by what you achieve. Wealth, power, political force, rank, fame, so on. But more importantly, within the context of my dialogue here, how you go about it. How you go about it. And how you think about it at the end of the day, or at the end of the journey. That's why I assert that character is the ultimate success factor. And it's why it automatically excludes all of the bad guys in history. Because it has a metric associated with how they go about it. And in my book, I present many great examples of character-driven success. Had a lot of fun, frankly, in pulling these ideas together and researching and considering who I might include. There's Dr. Jonas Salk. Many of you may recall he's the gent that discovered the polio vaccine. And what about the character doing that? Well, the big thing was he had the opportunity to create a patent on that and take in all the wealth that was obviously be associated with that horrible disease and finding a vaccine for it. But he did not do so. He chose to give it to the world. Give it to the world. That's a distinguishing element of character. I've included Jane Goodall, Albert Einstein, Ulysses Grant, Harry Truman, Ben Franklin, and of course George Washington, to name a few. In fact, this evening I have the delight pleasure of being the guest down at Mount Vernon at the George Washington Library for the study of his life, to speak to a group on my book, and I've woven a lot of George Washington's characteristics and attributes into my talk down there. But he truly was a very unique individual when it talks about the definition and attributes of character. So remember, good character is a quality we can all own. You can all own it, and no one can take it from you. And that was the message from my POW friends. That's me. They can't take that from me. They can abuse my body, they can break my will, they never can take who I am from me. And quite frankly, he gave them much of the impetus and motivation to endure their travail. As hotel chain entrepreneur J.W. Marriott once said, success is a combination of many things, but a good character is a foundation of the kind of success that will bring you real happiness. So he kind of nicely encapsulates the ideas that I was trying to frame. So I claim that we need a character turnaround in this country. And having been a CEO in some adverse times, I have a little notion of what turnarounds can be like and how challenging. But anyway, I propose this for the sake of the success and future of our country. The character of our nation reinforces the legitimacy of our global leadership, legitimacy of it, the vitality of our economy, and the credibility of our cultural influence around the world. And I'm very fond of this quote by Mr. Roosevelt, who once said, "People grow through experience if they meet life honestly and courageously. This is how character is built." National character is built on the character and values of our people. And it's for our nation's success at home and around the world that I am sounding a call to action. Ladies and gentlemen, we can continue to have headlines about cheating, bribery, duplicity, moral indiscretion, and do nothing about it. Or we can, each in our own way, point to doing the right thing and see that the job gets done. It has to start somewhere. And I submit it's all about character, values, and pride. Character, values, and pride. So this is what my book's all about. Character, the ultimate success factor. And again, as quoted earlier, Norm Augustine wrote in the foreword, character is something we should all think about, no matter where we are in life. So I would say to you, if we want to see things take a better course, we better get busy and get committed to character. And frankly, spread the word about it. I have one last little message here, and that is all proceeds and royalties from the sale of this book, everything, total, goes to my charity that I have sponsored for years, CAUSE, which stands for Comfort for America's Uniformed Services, and we help wounded warriors and veterans from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars and their families through rehabilitation and recreational support programs. I'm also proud to be a charter member of CAUSE's board of directors since it was formed, with the first wounded coming back in 2003. And my company, CACI, in its philanthropy and outreach, has assisted CAUSE for the last 12 years as well. These are not good times for these kinds of organizations. Many of our citizens and colleagues feel wars are over, or about over, and these issues are not that important, or they're overtaken by events. The trouble is that for the wounded, for the disabled, the wars are never over. They will take these, many of them, to their graves. So I would thank you for any donations you feel you might make here. It would be sincerely appreciated. And lastly, I want to thank everyone for being here today and listening to me talk about character and some of the things that I think are important. And I even backed it up with a few stats. So at least I've got, I think, a framework that lends credibility and veracity to the theories that I have here. So, John and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to be here.